starting with an ADU is the two big F's, financing and feasibility. So we encourage folks to understand what their total budget is so that we can very quickly dial in the size of a project during feasibility. That, of course, is going to the findings during that first process of work, things like understanding the zoning that applies to your lot, what's the topography, what are the existing conditions with the utilities and the positioning of the property and all the different existing structures. All that will affect what is sort of the floor of the cost of your project. So understanding that part's really important to then know, okay, well, how big can I go in my budget in a lot of folks' cases?
Welcome back to another episode of From Dirt to Doorknobs, podcast where we take you behind the curtain of residential building industry here in San Diego. I'm your host, Brian Zanini. And as always, we're sponsored by Cal Home Co. Construction. Here at Cal Home Co., our mission is to build 1,000 doors or 1,000 homes by 2032, just to help fight some of the housing crisis that we have here in San Diego. But here's what we do know is that most homeowners don't get stuck because they don't want to build. They get stuck because they don't know where to start. Some of the questions they're going to be asking are, do I go custom design? Do I pick a pre-design plan? How long will it take? Also, what will it cost? That seems to be one of the biggest questions on most people's mind, especially in today's market and economy. Today's guest is someone who has helped hundreds of homeowners answer those exact questions. Whitney Hill is co-founder and CEO of SnapADU, California's largest women-owned ADU company. She's built her company around making ADUs more predictable and streamlined with thoughtful design and ready-to-go plans. Whitney also helps shape ADU policy here in San Diego and has been recognized as a 40 under 40 business leader and one of the top 100 home building experts in 2025. Welcome to the show, Whitney.
Brian, thanks so much for having me.
Of course. Glad you could join us. Really excited to have you on the show. I think that, I've told a couple people that you were coming on and their initial reaction was, why are you having a competitor on your podcast? It's a simple answer to me. You and I both sit on a couple committees with the Building Industry Association of San Diego. I think the only way we move forward and really address this housing crisis is by not looking at each other as competition, but as starting to look at each other as allies. And how can we help each other solve some of the archaic processes that are in place, as well as just streamlining some of the processes through SDG&E and the building department, working with contractors, working with designers. How do we make this process simpler, more affordable, and how do we ultimately build more units, right? That's our goal at the end of the day. I did want to start, and I understand, I wanted to give you a chance to give a little bit of background about yourself. I understand that you attended Yale, and you have several degrees. Just wanted to know, how did you go from a Yale student to starting SnapADU?
For sure. And Brian, so much of what you described really resonates with why SnapADU exists as well, wanting to contribute to the housing here and try to improve what is often a broken process. So we dive into that complexity with open arms. But yes, so I did go to school on the East Coast, thought I was going to be an econ major, very quickly realized that was not my calling. So I ended up my first job out of college was in operations management. So I had my background actually working in a warehouse and learned about processes and people management very early. And from there, moved on to management consulting at Bain & Company, where I was able to advise about a dozen different companies in just 2 years on their strategy, their organization, their supply chains. So all that really gave me a great overall background to be able to pivot into something on my own. And I got into the construction space by way of real estate investing. I had intended to just be a financing partner on real estate opportunities, repositioning small apartment complexes and the like. I ended up financing a couple of deals that were local to me at the time back in New Jersey, where we actually were doubling the square footages of homes out there in great school districts commutable to New York. So I started out the financing partner and quickly realized that if we were going to do that at scale, we needed a construction company that was disciplined and thoughtful and looking for repeatable processes. So we did about a dozen of those. And in the meantime, I learned about ADUs, moved out to California and was looking for an opportunity to get involved locally now in California, right? So this was back in 2019, 2020, when California first passed the most sweeping ADU regulations. So I happened to overhear a conversation with a couple of folks talking about ADUs, went over to introduce myself, and then that led to me meeting my co-founder, who was a GC. And so our skill sets really combine nicely to allow us to build SnapADU, focused on exclusively detached new construction design build here in San Diego. So now we're proud to have completed 100 builds actually in the ground. And so we think that firsthand experience, channeling that back to the homeowners and helping everyone learn from these experiences. And like what you pointed out, is not a very transparent process. That's been a big part of our mission, alongside, of course, just building.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, what a cool story and journey for you to end up here in probably one of the most prominent ADU cities, just as, underdeveloped land, lots of lots with potential to have additional units on their property. There is a constant uphill battle with legislation constantly changing, and us having to keep on top of that and being at the forefront of trying to help change and shift some of that legislation to benefit property owners here in San Diego. But I guess, with your journey and that bringing you here, and with all the experience that you've built, the first question anyone's going to ask, and probably the question we get asked most frequently, is, where do I start? What advice would you give to any homeowners or investors that are saying like, hey, I really want to get into this game, whether it be building an age-in-place, ADU for my parents, so they don't have to go into a retirement home and they can stay closer to the family, or for investment purposes? Where do you feel like is the first place people should get started when they want to learn about this process?
Yes, starting with an ADU is the two big F's: financing and feasibility. So we encourage folks to understand what their total budget is, so that we can very quickly dial in the size of a project during feasibility. That, of course, is going to the findings during that first process of work, things like understanding the zoning that applies to your lot, what's the topography, what are the existing conditions with the utilities, and the positioning of the property and all the different existing structures. All that will affect what is sort of the floor of the cost of your project. So understanding that part's really important to then know, okay, well, how big can I go in my budget in a lot of folks' cases? In other cases with rentals, folks come to us asking, how do I optimize this? Should I do 2 units versus 1 with different bedroom mixes and such? And you can build multiple units in many situations, whether you're multifamily or even in the city of San Diego. If you're not, you can build many units. So a lot of what we do is try to get the information to the property owner, the kind of deal breakers on a job, as cheaply as we can. So we try to sequence that work and feasibility to get a good answer, and then decide what that next thing is that could either shift the cost significantly or kill the project entirely, and advise the client on what's that next piece of information that we need to usually pay for to go get, whether that's mapping utilities or doing a survey, something of that nature.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, you're bringing into, I always say there's probably 4 solid pillars to every project: finance, planning or design, permitting, and construction, right? And even before you get into some of those major pillars, that due diligence and that research and that curiosity of what is possible on my property is probably the number one question you need to ask yourself, because you could qualify for $1 million loan, but if you don't have your floor area ratio to build what you want, or you don't have, and for those of you that don't know, floor area ratio has to do with your lot size and how many habitable square feet you're able to build on your property. Every part of San Diego is different. There are different FARs. So that's one of the first things you want to investigate, is if you're trying to maximize the potential for rental on your property, that's one of the questions you're going to want to dive into and figure out first. And then you kind of start looking at designs, whether it be with an architect, or if you're going, design build, looking at one of your many different options that you guys have. You guys have an amazing website, by the way. I've been on it plenty of times. I will admit humbly that I've gone to your website to check legislation in certain municipalities, because you guys do a great job at keeping that up to date. But yeah, very impressed with your website and the way you guys market yourself. Something that always kind of stood out to me is you guys seem like you guys have a proven process. You guys follow things and have procedures to make sure that you give your clients a good experience. And that's something that we have built into our process as well. We're all about the customer experience and trying to provide, a start to finish turnkey, operation as far as building, working with the right people, bringing in the right network. I think you've done a great job doing that for yourself, and obviously having people like you to partner with has been amazing as well. I mean, if someone were to ask you, like, what are my options for an ADU, what do you think, like, your first answer would be?
What are your options? I think first you've got to go somewhere where you're working with folks who've built ADUs before. There are several softwares out there that allow you to quickly assess what the underlying zoning is, at least the underlying topography was when that plot was established. So some really quick inputs from folks like us can allow you to save days, weeks, months of struggle. And I say folks like us as builders, because I do think it's critical to get that input early, because how things actually transpire in later parts of the project, both with utilities and site work, those can be the deal breakers. It's pretty easy in some ways to design like the unit itself, okay, but it's all those other factors that pertain to that particular property. So to answer what are my options, you really want to understand what's the buildable envelope, both what you could max it out at, but also where is like the most cost-effective area to build. Just because you can go to a zero setback on your side yard, for example, where you can in San Diego, should you do that? And there's a number of reasons not a good decision in a lot of cases, right? You don't have access there. You're going to trigger fire rated construction and surveys. And we like to say, 2 feet can cost you $10,000, because just simple moves like that can change the whole game. So I think the critical part is talking to folks who've done this many times, because you can read the letter of the law, or have someone who's done it once or twice. And until you see more of these things interact, it's hard to get a real answer. And things interact means state law and local law, as well as the interpretation from your plan reviewer. So that's what I think, you appreciate the kind words about the website, Brian. That's what we try to bring to the fore. When we started out, there was just so little information online. And now there's so much more with AI. Folks are cranking it out. But I don't want to just regurgitate like code. I want to tell folks, here's what we found out when we went through plan check and how they interpreted it and when and who, because that's the kind of info that will actually help somebody else know the real cost on their project and hopefully save them that. A stat I was shocked to find, we analyzed the permitting data for the city of San Diego, and only about half of the projects that were submitted were ever built or in progress 3 years later, which means fully a half were either canceled, withdrawn, still languishing in plan check. When I pulled that same data for Snap, 90% of ours had been completed. So the reason for that is that we really do try to give that all-in answer up front. And because of that, a lot of times folks are freaked out by the total cost.
Sure.
But I'd rather have them have that real answer now versus they start the project, they get more information later, and suddenly it's 80,000 more. They can't do it. So we really do pride ourselves on trying to be transparent, like you were mentioning as well. So we're definitely aligned on that.
Yeah, I think that's such an important thing that unfortunately is not taken on by every builder everywhere or every designer everywhere. They don't necessarily always keep the client's costs in mind, right? I've seen architectural drawings that have killed a project because the architect wanted to put a fountain in the middle of the courtyard that they didn't need, which means they had to run water to a weird location. I have a ton of examples of why projects have died, and it's just because the finances weren't able to align and it didn't pencil out at the end of the day, and they've already gone through the design and the permitting, and now they're in the hole $40,000 to $60,000, right? Depending on who they're working with. You brought up a couple interesting points, some of the things I was going to bring up. So I would say one of the things that's been on my mind recently, and that I'd love having another, contractor on the podcast to talk about, is the AI and the content that's being put out there about ADUs these days. There's a lot of great content, and unfortunately, what I've been seeing is a lot of misinforming content. I saw a Instagram reel several days ago where there's a guy who was talking about, oh yeah, if you're looking to build an ADU, you're going to get bids for $120,000 from contractors who don't know what they're doing. But if you go to this website, like I did, you can build a 400 square foot ADU. I got it built for $36,000. And he's walking around and he's showing his finishes and his countertops and this beautiful space.
Right.
And it's laughable because you can't even get the framing done for $36,000.
Right.
You can't even get the finishes done for $36,000. So in your mind, just so it's not just coming from me when I talk to my clients and there's another point of view. I mean, on average, let's say if you have a completely flat lot, utility tie-ins are relatively easy. Um, what can people expect cost-wise? Whether you want to try to throw out a broad, square footage price number for vertical construction, or if you want to maybe pick like a square footage size ADU that you guys have built a lot of recently, that you kind of know where the costs fall. What would you say to like someone should expect if they're looking to build an ADU? Where do you think those fall?
Sure. Like I mentioned, there's certain costs that are going to apply no matter how big you go. The unit itself, we refer to as the vertical build cost. And it's important to understand, does that include finishes or not? What's the level there? All that pricing we actually put on our website with our plans. If you're looking to scope that out, I can give you some numbers now, but for like a 2-bed, 2-bath, 1,000 square foot unit, we would sell a standard build for around the mid to low 300,000s for the like unit and all the finishes. So that comes out to what, 340 a square foot, right? You get bigger from there. Of course, the cost per square foot goes down because the same kitchen and baths are there. Now you're building cheap space, right? The living room, the bedrooms, all that. If you go down, if you get building just a little 500 square foot, 1 bed, 1 bath, your cost per square foot on that's going to go up much higher. $400 to $500 a square foot is what it usually comes out to. So that's the build itself, right? And then you've got all the other costs. What does that mean? The design, the permitting, the site work, the utility tie-ins, any additional demolition needs to happen on your property, anything funky with the hillside where you might need to do a retaining wall or some deepened footings. So all those costs, we usually give a ballpark of between 70,000 on the light side, all the way up. I mean, sky's the limit, right? But 100, 150 could be huge if you have to put in a bunch of site construction. So again, the little projects end up being pretty darn expensive on a cost per square foot basis, because you got to remember, you're still mobilizing all those trades. You still have all the same people there, the same, work on a set of plans, the same dumpster has to be there, the portable facilities, all that. So there's, always that sticker shock when somebody's like, well, I built a house in 2018 and it was 200 square foot. It's like, well, not only was that, 8 years ago, and we've had like 10% inflation some of those crazy years, right? But also just the small units aren't efficient to build,
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah. And thank you for clarifying that. That's a conversation I have to have with people all the time. And we host events here on ADUs at our office. And just kind of letting people know, well, I'm only building, I'm doing a garage conversion. I'm only doing a 400 square foot. Why is my square footage price so high? And like you said, like we call the smaller units, we're building essential space. There's plumbing and electrical and almost all of the utilities are being run through almost every wall because there isn't a lot of space.
Right.
We're building kitchen and bathroom, and then usually a small living room and a small kitchen, and that drives the square footage prices up. Living rooms are cheap, dining rooms are cheap, garages are cheap. So doing the feasibility and learning and figuring out exactly what you want to build, I think are a big part of learning where your costs are going to be. And thank you for sharing some of your costs with us, because I think maybe that's, it's on your website, so I guess it's all public knowledge at this point. But it's nice to hear that your costs are in line with ours and that you give realistic expectations on those things, because setting false expectations from the start is what is getting a lot of the contractors in San Diego in trouble.
Yes.
Because they jump into the permitting and design process with these hopes that they're going to build a 600 square foot ADU for $120,000 to learn that it's just not possible. I mean, it is with, paper walls, but
sure. Or like unlicensed labor or cutting corners, but it's all about your risk tolerance too. I'm giving you a realistic number with a professionally fully licensed and insured company that's going to stand behind warranty. I'm not disappearing after you've paid the last check. So you're definitely, giving a realistic number to know like how we're going to serve this job as well. So for those folks who do want to save money by managing some of it, I actually think that's when I see folks go more for the model that Cal Home Co has, where you focus on the build, you partner with architects and have that piece sort of out of your scope typically. And that can have some savings then, where you're able to either handle some of that management yourself in the middle, or you bid it out, that sort of thing. So really what we try to offer is that predictability. And it's just different value to different people. If you have time in your hands, you have construction experience, I'm probably not the best fit. Snap's probably not the right answer. So it's just, all about those trade-offs.
Right. Yeah, there's a difference between, I worked construction when I was in college for a few years, so I'm going to handle all the finishes. If you want to take that on, that's your prerogative. But when you're working with a company like SnapADU or with Cal Home Co., you're coming to us because you're looking for a full service general contractor that's going to deliver a product that's going to last you a really long time and you don't have to worry about, right? We're all backed, we're all bonded, we're all licensed. We do things the right way for a reason, right? We want to build a reputation. We want to continue to build homes. If we went out there and we were unlicensed and we got shut down, there's no more homes being built, right? So
And
there's a
sadly,
cost
that happens.
there. It does happen. And I've seen projects just stall. And yeah, and you don't want to work with a contractor, get halfway through a project, and then the city comes by and the inspector's like, what are you doing? There's no permit here, or this is done wrong. You're not passing inspection. So, and that again, it comes with doing your research, doing your due diligence, making sure you're working with someone that has a reputation, check references, check testimonials, ask to see other current job site builds. If they are not willing to give you any three of those things, like that's probably a red flag that they're doing something a little under the table.
Completely agree. There ought to be a track record of your actual project type in their geography, even. We see so often that, like you were seeing with the AI, it's so easy to look like there's a flashy product there, and you start pulling back the layers, and they've done like two ADUs, and suddenly they're learning on your project. Like, you don't want to be the guinea pig. I can tell you that.
No, absolutely not. Yep. That's a quick way to drive costs upward.
Yes.
Another, I guess, big topic as a builder and a conversation I'm sure you have on day one with most people that are calling in or requesting time with you guys is, how long can I expect this process to take?
Right.
And typically, you guys are design builds. We don't run, the designs through the building department. So you guys have a lot more experience with that. And I would say over the last 6 months to 8 months, the timelines with the building department for permits have changed drastically, especially over the last year. What are you guys seeing for typical turnaround times? And let's just say City of San Diego to keep it simple.
Yes. City of San Diego, once you submit, you're going to reliably get your first round of comments back. Honestly, within 20 to 30 business days. And there have been, state laws passed around that. And for a while it was a problem, but I agree with you. We're getting some back in like 2 weeks. So I agree that turn times have definitely changed. So that's just to get your comments back, right? Then you got to go through this revision process. And this is probably a good time to mention that's so normal. You're never going to get something approved on the first pass. It just doesn't happen for myriad of reasons. So expect, I would say, 2 to 3 rounds of revisions in most cases, especially if you're doing right-of-way work where there almost always has to be another submittal that's catching up and it gets real detailed. So all in, time you start with the city, time you get your permit, it's going to be anywhere between 3 to 6 months, depending on how much complexity is going on with your submission.
Absolutely. How have you seen, I've been curious about this with, you guys have designs that are on your website that are pre-designed. People can kind of do some window shopping from their home, which is great. Using maybe the same design multiple times and having those go through the permitting, the permitting process and going through all the departments, have you found that having a repetitive design go through the process and the whole permitting cycle, have you found that that's sped up timelines at all, or is it really all dependent on who it gets assigned to?
I would say that the time savings on using a standard plan is during the feasibility and design process before you submit to the city, because suddenly we're not having a debate, where's your closet going? We just know all that. It's done. We know the price. It's much faster. Think 6 weeks for all the feasibility steps versus, 5-6 months for custom. It's crazy. So it's huge savings there. Big savings in the build time as well, because we've already field vetted this plan. We already built it at least a couple times and troubleshot anything that made sense on paper and did not make sense in practice, right? You can have a completely code compliant design that in the field has problems. So we like to build the same ones so we can get, really streamlined. Permitting itself, not faster, honestly, because you still have to have all the property requirements reviewed, the buildable envelope, like I said, so that you'll have fewer comments on the build itself on that unit, but that's honestly not the stickiest part in most cases anyway. There has not been a noticeable improvement in permit turnaround times for standard plans. The savings come at the beginning and end of the project.
Right. Yeah. And I just I was hoping the answer would be different just for your guys' sake, and just only because there's got to be something we can do, right? Yes. We're working on that, and we're putting our heads together as much as we can in the BIA and coming up with ideas. And that's just always going to be a work in progress.
And, it's things like the fire requirements too, that at the BIA is a focus for us, of course, where having that clarity and predictability in the city part of this puzzle is where we would really want the help, more even than the pre-approved plans, like having a better process for those different departments is where we see opportunity. So we're excited to dig into that with Cal Homeco and others on the BIA.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you feel like your involvement with the BIA and other organizations around, making legislation change
Yeah.
has impacted your role at SnapADU as CEO? Do you feel like coming to San Diego was a bit of a shock when it comes to all the red tape that comes along with building, or is it something that kind of excites you in the fact that it's a challenge?
Yeah. When you're at a national builder conference and they find out you're from California, everybody says, "Oh,"
Oh, so
because they
sorry.
know how bad it is. Yeah. It's not like I would have, if I could wave my wand, I wouldn't have said yes, complexity, but I'm here to fix it, and so my involvement has to be, I found that to be effective at advocating for change that will actually help in a legislative context, I have to stay close enough to what's going on in the field. And I'm one of the few people who can do that, honestly. So I sort of feels like obligation to the industry, like, all right, if not us, who's going to fix it? So I try to carve out enough time to do that, to be able to credibly comment on pieces of legislation that are going to be proposed, be an active member of things like the BIA here, or even statewide entities like the Casita Coalition that advocates for ADU policy. And it's such a broad, complex topic that I'm not going to have answers on even a fraction of it. But I feel like where I do have content, I want to do my best to help move the ball forward. But it's tough. We're all out here trying to run businesses with all the same problems everybody has. Layer all the lobby and advocacy part on top of it. It's a lot to try to stay on top of.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a full-time job on the side for sure. You've been great. You've been a big participant, and you're leading some of the committee conversations, which I think is really, really cool that you're taking the time to do that. It just shows how much you care. I appreciate all your efforts. And as I get a little more involved with BA this year, we just joined not too long ago, so trying to get as involved as possible. I'm really looking forward to having you as a partner in the BIA. What are some of the challenges you feel like you face going the design build route? I guess, what are some of your biggest objections? And I'll tell you some of mine, vice versa, just so that we can start giving people that are like, which direction do I go? Do I go to design build, or do I go, custom design?
Sure.
What are, I guess, some of the objections you guys face? And I'll do my turn so it's not one-sided.
Yeah. Oh, I'm excited. So I would say the biggest objections we face are around folks wanting to have like a competitive bid process on the build. Because in a way, if you're picking to go design build, you're making that whole decision up front around your partner there. So those are usually people who do want Snap. They're already considering design build across multiple folks. We aren't set up for that. Our plans are so detailed that we don't offer like a plans only service because it's all built around our build process and details I wouldn't put in there if I was an architecture firm, right? So I don't really want to, offer just that. So that's why we only do design build. So some folks don't like that because they've done, remodels in the past. They want to bid it out to 3 builders, or they just like always run that process because they already have construction experience, something like that. And some folks are willing to kind of roll the dice on that and are willing to trade like the predictability of going with one provider for some possible cost savings of outsourcing pieces to different parties. So that's probably the number one contention I hear.
That makes sense to me, but I think that is a perfect reason why you and I are competitors, but are able to work so closely, is because I do have people that walk in my door that come to my events, and they really just want that one-stop shop, that white glove service. I just want to talk to one company, one person. I have the funds, or I've lined up finances. I just want to go start, point A to point B as quick as possible. And anyone that comes up and is dead set on that solution, like obviously it's my job to sell against that. But look, my process isn't for everybody. Your process isn't for everybody. Right. That's why both of our companies can coexist. And happy to send them your way and say, hey, if you're looking for a great experience, start to finish, they have processes in place, SnapADU will take great care of you. And I'm happy to send that over to you guys.
Right. And we do the same because folks come to us with a permitted plan set and it's like, I'm not your the right option, but go talk to Cal Home Co.
Yeah. No, and we appreciate those referrals. Thank you for those. And it's nice to be able to help those people out because they are looking for trusted builders in San Diego. And unfortunately, I feel like those are hard to find sometimes. Yelp isn't always a great place to look.
Right.
I have seen so many fake reviews. It makes my head spin. So it is really cool to be building a network of people in the industry that even if they're not a right fit for me, I can at least say, hey, I know someone that's going to take really great care of you and they do it exactly the way you want to do it.
Totally. And you're kind of getting the benefits of that whole network too. There were several times where I've reached out to you or to other architects that were, we collaborate with just on a professional basis where, hey, have you seen this situation before? Like we've tried this, like what else can we do? And people come to me with those same questions. And I love that, like you were talking about collaboration in the industry, because no one company is going to have enough at bats to see every situation. So being able to tap into sort of the hive mind is great. And that reminds me of the AI call out that you made. Not only is it really easy for folks to kind of create content in this era, it's also really easy to be led astray using AI for regulatory research. I love AI. I use it so much, but that is one thing I do not use it for because it is not reliable to just pop in like, what can I build? Like, no, absolutely not. You got to go to the code yourself.
Yeah, you got to be careful. There's a lot, like I said, you can go down rabbit holes and get yourself lost in a ton of misinformation. And you probably know that as well as I do. And I get targeted for all that because I'm always looking at what's out there. And it's a little scary. And I think that that's something, I'm glad we're addressing that on this podcast because I think that being wary, it's fine to do your research. But if you are going to go out and start talking to reputable companies, at least ask those questions like, hey, I saw this online. Does that sound real to you? Like, does that sound doable? I'm happy to be completely upfront with you. I'm not going to lie to you just to earn your business. My goal is to just like say, hey, like, actually that might be done if you go this route. We don't do that, but you can go prefab. You can buy a tough shed that's 140 square feet and turn it into a 1-bedroom studio if you want. That'll save a ton of money, but that's not the way we do things. So if you are looking to go that route, that can be done. Or, hey, I can build a 400 square foot ADU for $36K. Absolutely not. Let's have a conversation around why. And the thing that I preach and want to continue to preach on this podcast as we continue to film it is just education. And I think the more, valid knowledge and information that you can pull from trusted resources is the only way you're really going to get clear answers on cost, timelines. And I think it's great that you guys do the same thing we do by setting those clear, realistic expectations up front. And sometimes the conversations lead to, wow, that was a lot more than I thought it would be. Like maybe this isn't right for me. But at least they get to figure that out in 20 minutes by talking to us versus, hiring an architect, submitting for permits, and then finding out, their hopes and dreams are not obtainable.
Could not agree more. I'd rather give the bad news now than later.
Yep, absolutely. It saves everybody a lot of time and money. I wanted to kind of lean into what's next for SnapADU. Where do you guys see yourself in 5 years? What's kind of your guys' long-term goal?
So I would say that we want to continue to lean into our specialization here in San Diego, detached design build. I don't see that changing in the near term. Reason for that, we want to be really good at what we do. And I think if we did try to expand elsewhere, we would sacrifice that. Ask that regularly. So I see us growing to maybe twice the size we are in the next 5 years. Part of the reason for the growth would just be so that we all want to work here. We're a fairly small team at 13. If we were more like 25, I could better cover for vacation. People could go away more easily. I don't want any one person to be too critical to anybody's project. I want to cover and have it feel sustainable. We push hard a lot of times because we care about these projects. So we could do that a lot better with a slightly larger team, which is the reason for our growth. So for me, it's more about like building something I want to be a part of. Otherwise, I would go work for someone else in corporate like I did for a decade. Right. So it's about building a company that we can be proud of, that we love coming to work and solving these problems, and is a win in creating flexibility for the people we're building for and for ourselves.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I love that answer. This is the first job I've had where I'm excited to come to work. I'm excited about the people that I work with, and the network that we build collectively, because we have not only the construction side, but under the same umbrella, we have a real estate and investment team. We're a part of some development projects here in San Diego to increase the number of doors and fight the housing crisis. We're actually having a real estate event at our office we're setting up for right now. No one will be able to show up because this still has to be edited, but we do those about once a month. If people are interested, we'll put that in the comments section so you can learn more information about that. What about you, as far as, are there any events coming up you're excited about? Any big things happening this year for you guys or you personally?
Yeah, we lean into information publishing. So our big thing this year is going to be a 2026 ADU report based on our findings from a large homeowner survey we conducted last fall, and also analyzing all the San Diego permit data. So looking to kind of reflect on this 100 builds we've done, try to get something out of it to help others. So we're publishing that this quarter. So, also just, building our team, that sort of thing. So those are the biggest focuses for us right now.
Awesome. That's super exciting. I would love to see that when you're done with it.
Totally.
Is there anything else you want to kind of promote or let us know about SnapADU?
I would just say, as folks are considering how to proceed with their project, make sure that you are focused on that true all-in number, getting several qualified opinions to give you the real utility costs, the site costs, all those not so fun pieces that really are critical. So get that apples to apples comparison to make sure you're fully grounded. That's the biggest piece of advice I can give.
I love it. Whitney, I want to thank you for your time and so glad to have you on the podcast. And I know that we'll be talking here shortly. I think we have a BIA meeting tomorrow, and look forward to working with you for years to come.
Likewise, I really appreciate it, Brian. Great to see you.